This was found 600 meters from the waterfall, a charred hut, a noose on a beam, and a tape without a signature. What would you do if a person says in the frame, "I went through the point"? To the north. It's easier there, but according to the data, he did not go there. 3 weeks after his disappearance, his GPS was found in another part of the route, with no way back. What if the fabric with the noose next to the tracks did not belong to him? This is the story of a man who walked through the snow and disappeared in a flat clearing. According to gas station records in Roy, Utah, 34-year-old engineer James Hardy left town early on the morning of March 3rd, 2006. He rented a Jeep Liberty, filled the tank, and headed toward East Wenta, a sparsely populated area of the national forest known for its steep elevation, changes, and volatile weather during the off-season. A security camera at the register showed him alone, wearing a hiking jacket and carrying a backpack. According to his employer, an engineering firm in Ogden, Hardy notified co-workers in advance that he was taking a 3-day vacation and going to get away from it all. He described his plan to his closest friends as just an overnight hike, without specifying a route. This is confirmed by a text message sent at 9:41 a.m. that morning. Parking at East Entrance, going in, be out Monday. Trailhead 102, parking lot. Camera footage confirms he arrived there at 11:16 a.m., the last recorded point of his route. And there's no doubt about it. His car, a rented Liberty, was found there 8 days later. Inside were spare batteries, a partially filled topographical map of the area, a pack of MREs, and a Army surplus receipt dated the previous day. Hardy was an experienced hiker, according to the Summit County Search and Rescue Team. He had done multiple solo hikes in the Canyonlands and Zion areas. But according to his sister, who he spoke to the day before the trip, he didn't mention he was planning to go so deep into the woods. He said he was just going for a walk along the creek to clear his head. I didn't think he was going to spend the night. According to weather data, the temperature in the East Wenta area that day was 2 degrees Celsius, with possible night frosts of 10 degrees Celsius. Snow cover in the forest ranged from 15 to 35 millimeters, especially above 2,000 meters above sea level. This significantly limited the visibility of tracks and the potential range of vision. When James failed to contact him by the evening of March 6th as planned, his boss acted first, sending a text message and then calling him without a response. A day later, his sister intervened, filing an official missing person report. Patrol officers went to the parking lot where they found the car and realized Hardy had not returned. There were almost no tracks around the car. Snowfall over the previous 3 days could have covered them. Important detail: according to the carrier, the last signal from his phone was at 12:09 on March 3rd in the area of Hanks Brook, about 5 kilometers from the parking lot. After that, the device was turned off or lost power. The radio that could have been used for emergency communication, according to the records from his car, was purchased in advance. But the log does not indicate whether he took it with him. Thus, by the time the search began on March 7th, there were only 3 points of support: a parking lot, a phone signal, and an unclear route that Hardy had not indicated to anyone. The absence of a note in the car, the absence of tracks, and the switched-off GPS became the first alarming factors. According to the Summit County Rescue Team, it took less than an hour from the time they arrived at the campsite until James Hardy's last signal was received at 12:09 p.m. near Hanks Brook at an elevation of about 7,500 feet. This location is not part of the official hiking trail along the eastern edge of the forest. It is not marked on any public trail. However, satellite data suggests that the location is accessible via an old dirt road used by rangers until the 1990s. Near this spot, temporary evidence of a campsite was later found, an area of packed snow, scraps of packaging from a tourist meal, and a pair of partially burnt thermal socks. However, there was no tent, backpack, or other belongings nearby. None of the trail cameras installed along the routes recorded James in this area, meaning that he most likely turned away from the designated trail within the first hour of the hike. An analysis of the GPS device found only 19 days later showed that he had set up an overnight stop at 1642 on March 3rd. The device showed that he had walked about 8.4 kilometers to the southeast with a gradual increase in altitude. The overnight stop was recorded in a gorge between two ridges, where the snow falls deeper than usual. However, the temperature that evening had dropped sharply to 12 degrees with increasing wind. No one knows how well equipped he was, but the fact that he stopped in such a place raises doubts among the search coordinator. He stopped too early and too deep. This is not a typical bivouac point. It seems he was avoiding visible routes. The device has not transmitted new coordinates since March 3rd, and experts say this means one of two things. Either it was manually turned off or it failed. However, the battery was designed for 72 hours of continuous operation in sub-zero conditions. If it had simply frozen or died, the track should have ended gradually. Here, however, there is a clear end at 1642. Further analysis of Hardy's mailbox revealed that he had previously downloaded a topographic map of an area spanning 25 km into the forest, including a section where there were no official trails. Experts speculate that he was deliberately planning to go beyond the tourist areas. The reason is unknown. One odd moment came while checking his online profile on the hiking forum trailhead.org. A week before leaving, he left a comment on a thread about an abandoned radio booth that had supposedly stood on the Wenta slope since the late 1980s. He asked a follow-up question. If you come from the east side, is it above or below the creek crossing? But got no response. Rescuers began combing the gorges based on the GPS coordinates of the overnight camp, but no traces of human presence were found after March 3rd. No waste, no traces of a fire, no boot prints, and the snow has hardly melted since then. The only thing that aroused interest: On March 7th, one of the volunteers reported that at a distance of about 1.2 kilometers from that point, he noticed single tracks going towards the pass. However, the snow in this area is heavily subsiding, and it was not possible to confirm that these were human tracks. A photo taken on the spot shows only 2 clear dents, then an empty space. In any case, the second night passed without contact. No messages, no new coordinates. The radio, if he had one, did not respond. The rescuers assumed that he either lost his way on the first day or deliberately chose an isolated path. This greatly complicated the search. The radius of possible deviation was more than 40 square kilometers. According to the Summit County Search and Rescue Task Force, on March 9th, the 6th day after the mission was officially launched, one of the handlers spotted an area of compacted snow in a narrow ravine south of the suspected overnight campsite. The area was not in the initial search area. It was off the logical route if Hardy were heading back to camp. The distance from the last GPS signal was 1.6 miles, 2.6 kilometers, as the crow flies in the opposite direction from where he exited the forest. The remains of a temporary camp were found at the point found. According to experts, there was a one-person tent. The tent itself was missing, but a clear rectangular dent remained in the snow, typical of an ultra-light construction with side posts. Inside this spot was a neatly rolled-up awning hidden under spruce branches, a plastic cup, and a trace of a burner. A camping mat was found near the site, secured under a rock, as if it had been placed there to prevent it from flying away. There were no signs of a struggle, animal tracks, or blood at the site. Everything looked as if the person had gone away for 5 minutes and never returned. But the main question arose after analyzing the footprints around the camp. The tracks led from the campsite in a southeasterly direction towards Fox Ridge. They went clearly, parallel, with an equal pace. However, after 150 meters, they broke off. On a flat, open surface, without stones, without puddles, without snowdrifts. According to one of the senior coordinators, it wasn't a trace error. We used infrared scanning and manual inspection. The tracks go and disappear, no return, no deviation. It's like he was walking and just stopped leaving prints. What was especially alarming was that all of Hardy's personal belongings, except for the tent, were missing. No backpack, no trekking poles, no food. However, the mat and dishes that were found, the radio he was supposed to have, was also missing. It later turned out that the Midland GXT model he had purchased the day before his departure required manual activation every 12 hours. Otherwise, it went into sleep mode. No signal was received from it on the frequency specified for the search. The first working version emerged among the rescuers. Hardy had gone to check the route to the pass and had gotten into a disastrous situation, an avalanche, a fall, disorientation. However, the weather conditions in that area from March 4 to 7 did not record any avalanches or precipitation that could cover the tracks. In addition, Experienced mountaineer volunteers who inspected the slope did not find any torn bushes or dropped rocks, nothing that would indicate a fall. The most controversial element was a photo taken by an automated trail camera installed as part of the Mountain Goat Monitoring Project. The image, taken on March 5th at 8:16 a.m., shows a man in a khaki jacket, hooded hood, and yellow backpack crossing a valley about 4 kilometers from the camp, but in a completely different direction. The camera is angled with no face visible. The exact time matches when Hardy was expected to be in the area. However, after analyzing the image, experts doubted that it was Hardy in the photo. The height and build are similar, but a long stick or pole is visible in the frame. Hardy, according to his sister, had telescopic trekking poles. In addition, a yellow backpack was not listed among his equipment. Nevertheless, the camera was 8 kilometers from the road and 3 kilometers from the nearest trail, and did not record anyone else that week. The first false trail appeared, but on March 22nd, 19 days after the search began, licensed hunter Brian Keener, who was registered with the Seasonal Rabbit Control System, arrived in the East Wenta area. According to his statement to the county department, while walking along the edge of the southwest ridge, he noticed a strange glint on the rocks near the bluff and approached. There he found a Garmin eTrex Vista GPS unit, partially buried in snow. The unit was attached to a loop of paracord, but there was no sign of a backpack or clothing nearby. The battery was dead, but the unit itself was intact. When the rescuers took the device and connected it to the station, the entire internal memory of the route was available. The last active log was recorded on March 4th at 10:12, a day after the supposed first overnight stay. The device recorded movement from the point of the camp found earlier, strictly in the southeast direction, but then a turn almost at a right angle to the south, to the area marked on the topographic map as Gravel Saddle. This section is extremely difficult for hiking. Sharp stone outcrops, icy crossings, and the absence of a stable path. What especially alarmed the experts was that the final point where the GPS completed the recording was almost 13 kilometers from the camp, but in the completely opposite direction from the direction in which the tracks from the tent allegedly went. That is, the route according to the navigator and the direction in which Hardy left the camp did not coincide. One of the investigators voiced this in an official note. Either he was deliberately confusing the route or someone else was using the device. But the GPS location does not match what we saw at the tent site. According to the device log, Hardy started moving from the camp on March 4th at 06:23, moving in jerks with abrupt stops. Some points were recorded at intervals of 300-400 meters. Judging by the altitude, he crossed the pass and descended to the lower zone of the forest. It was there that the navigator switched off. The reason is unknown, a charge, a blow, or manual switching off. A separate question was raised by one of the user points recorded in the memory. called Rope 12. It is marked as a separate point, without a description, but with coordinates located off the track, about 1.8 kilometers to the west. Experts assumed that this could be a place to store equipment or a control mark. However, during the survey of the site, no rope or suspended elements were found, only an old snag with a rubbed surface, similar to a trace of a rope or paracord. Interestingly, there were no previous mentions of these places on Hardy's social networks or on his tourist forum, Mountain Bench. But one of the searchers noted that in 2002, a semi-abandoned observation point was temporarily based at these coordinates, dating back to the logging era, without a permanent road and without communication. Theoretically, if Hardy was purposefully heading towards this point, he knew about this object in advance. The only question is why? And why was the GPS left 700 meters from the landmark itself? In a report on March 24th, the rescue team outlined two versions. Hardy moved intermittently, turning off the device manually, perhaps to save battery. The device was reset or lost by another person after Hardy's disappearance. None of them explained why the final trajectory did not match the tracks found from the camp and why the device was outside the likely search area. On March 28th, nearly 4 weeks after the search began, volunteer local hikers were scouring the area west of Gravel Saddle, about 2 kilometers from the GPS blackout point. Among them was John Danvers, a former guide who knew the area from childhood. It was he who spotted the bundle, partially covered by rocks, at the base of a small waterfall known in local guidebooks as Broken Stream. The package consisted of 2 Ziploc bags wrapped in padded fabric and tied with 3 strands of thin nylon cord. Inside were packages of freeze-dried food, Mountain House brand, a chocolate bar, a folding knife, and a matchbox. One of the packages was marked with the date of purchase, February 28th, 2006, 3 days before Hardy left. All the food was dry, undamaged, and packaged with the obvious expectation of long-term storage. However, the writing on the inside of the fabric in marker was disturbing. Just in case, I'll come back if I don't forget. Handwriting analysis showed a high degree of consistency with entries found in Hardy's diary, later retrieved from his electronic archive image. He had been keeping it on a cloud service since 2003. However, this particular text had a distinctive feature. The letters R and N were written unusually loosely, as if in a hurry or an unstable position. The discovery site did not fit into any of the previously reconstructed routes. It was downstream from the supposed GPS disconnect point and could only be reached via a narrow rock chute. Note that this section is virtually impossible to walk without leaving tracks in the snow. But no tracks were found. All that was found were knee indentations at the edge of the stream and a light boot print on a wet rock, washed out, but consistent in length and width with Hardy's shoes. The greatest concern for rescuers was caused by a combination of 2 factors. The bundle was lying in a place known only to experienced tourists and not marked on ordinary tourist maps. It was clearly done in advance, with cold calculation, not as an emergency stop, but as a point of possible return. This led investigators to a new hypothesis. Hardy could have deliberately laid such return points in several places. However, if this is so, why were none of them mentioned in his preparations? And why did no one know his route? Also, the GPS found a week earlier didn't show a route to this package. It simply wasn't heading in that direction. Either the device had already been turned off by the time it was planted, or it came later, which begs the question, why didn't it leave any traces anywhere else? As the search area expanded, other alarms arose. One of the rescuers said he noticed a bundle of fishing line or thin wire strung between trees near the falls. But when he returned with the group, the element was gone. Whether this was a trace of an improvised signal marker or a perception, with each new element, Hardy's route seemed to veer further away from random survival and toward calculated, almost stealthy movement. But why, if he left no information to family, friends, or in his digital records? On April 3rd, while rechecking the area near the creek, 600 meters from Broken Stream Falls, a group of volunteers discovered a dilapidated cabin. According to archival maps, the structure was listed as an abandoned observation post from the massive logging operations of the 1970s. The facility was officially decommissioned in 1983 and has not been used, at least according to federal records. Inside, under the rubble of the floor, one of the volunteers, a former radio technician, found a plastic toolbox. Among other things, 2 D-size batteries, a broken compass, an aluminum pot, and a Hi-8 video cassette. The label on the cassette was missing, but the film inside was intact. The cassette was handed over to headquarters, where an equipment technician digitized the recording. The video is 41 minutes long. It was shot handheld, intermittently in places without any editing. The first half is footage of a winter forest, shot during the day. The camera follows a trail. You can hear a person breathing, and sometimes you can hear snow and branches cracking in the background. At the 23rd minute, a voice, quiet, distorted by the wind, presumably says, "I've been here before." At 29:12, there's a stop at a tree with the inscription 12 carved into it. The cameraman zooms in, shakes the camera, and then at 30:01, the shot suddenly ends. After 30 minutes, there's footage from inside a hut. The camera is on some kind of support, maybe a shelf. A man in a gray jacket appears in the frame, the hood down. He's sitting with his back to the lens, sorting through some objects. The light is from a flashlight or headlamp. At 34:07, he turns around abruptly, and his face is visible for about 1.5 seconds. The quality is poor, but the shape of his nose and cheekbones matches James Hardy's. However, his hair is shorter than in the parking camera photo, and he's noticeably thinner. One eye is half closed, as if from swelling or a bruise. The culmination was the final fragment, 39:44. The camera is in hands again, moving around the hut. The man says, "If anyone finds it, I went through the point. To the north. It's easier there." A snowy window appears on the screen, then a dark spot. The last 30 seconds, the recording raised many questions. If it really is Hardy, who filmed the rest? Why is point mentioned? It is unclear whether we are talking about a coordinate, a signal, or an object. The main thing, according to the date code in the film, the high 8 time code built into the signal. The recording was made on March 5th, 1617. This is 6 hours later. Then, according to GPS data, he turned off the device in a completely different location. Experts allowed for 2 possibilities, or the date on the tape is incorrect due to equipment failure, or the route taken after the GPS was turned off covered a much greater distance than was thought, and during this time he managed to return to the old hut. A second inspection of the hut found a rope loop on a beam, unused but secured. A short metal hook lay nearby, unattached to any piece of furniture according to the report. What happened at the cabin between March 5 and 6 is unknown, but the video was the first visual record of the man believed to be James Hardy since his hike. On April 6th, a team of professional trackers from Garfield County, brought in at the request of the search leader, surveyed the area northwest of the cabin, an area that Hardy described in the video as easier. The area was a series of gentle slopes and crusty clearings rarely visited by hikers. It was there, in one of these clearings, that team coordinator Michael Sanders recorded a strange anomaly. According to him, tracks were clearly visible in the snow, single, almost even, with a regular interval, going in a straight line to the north. The depth of the tracks indicated a person of average build with a full load, about 18 to 20 kilos. The direction was strictly northeast towards Highway 150, although there were more than 11 kilometers left to it. Sanders and his partner followed these tracks for about 400 meters, after which they recorded an abrupt interruption. The tracks literally ended on a flat surface, without cliffs, rocks, streams, or slopes. The snow was dense, the crust was almost unbroken, not a single sign of a deviation to the side, not a single knocked down bush, no deviation in the trajectory. They recorded the GPS coordinates of the point and took several photos. In one of them, the track ends as if in the air. There are still 5 to 6 meters of snow ahead, but not a single print. Sanders described it in the report. It's not like the tracks are erased by the wind. Everything is quiet nearby. There are no driftwood. It's just, he walked and disappeared. Later, thermal imaging drones and dog teams were additionally used in this area. Not a single biological trace was found. However, a strange element was found near the point of the cliff. A piece of material was hanging on a branch, black, dense, as if from a tourist case. On it, a loop through which a sling or carabiner could pass. Traces of blood, biomaterial, or fingerprints were not found, but the fabric had a strong smell of technical lubricant. This element did not belong to any item from Hardy's arsenal. Based on weather data and the shape of the tracks, the headquarters concluded that the tracks appeared on March 6th in the morning hours, i.e., 3 days after he set out on the route. But where he could have gone from this place is unclear. There is not a single place within a radius of 300 meters where he could have hidden or gone along a different trajectory unnoticed. By this point, the search party had several conflicting layers of information at its disposal. According to GPS, the route was completed on March 4th. According to the videotape, he is alive on March 5th in a hut. By the tracks in the clearing, he moved on March 6th. According to the camera signal, someone similar to him was in the other direction on the morning of March 5th. The version that he had simply... On April 7th, the headquarters called off the active phase of the search. But one of the volunteers, a local college employee, insisted on checking Hardy's personal notes, downloaded from his cloud profile. Among the excerpts dated February 2006 was a note. Check. Point north 12. Return. Line through the ridge depends if I can find the entrance. Not a word about the route. Not a word about the plan. Only the recorded interior orientation. What did point north mean? Was this the same clearing? On April 10th, 37 days after James Hardy's disappearance, the search headquarters finally moved into the archival phase. All active operations were curtailed, and the recovered materials were turned over to the district office as an incident with elements of unreliable topography and unpredictable behavior of the subject. The report included the wording, "The point of discrepancy between the data and the trajectory of the person's movement cannot be explained unambiguously." An attempt by analysts to compare the GPS log, the found objects, traces, and a fragment of the video showed the main thing. James Hardy's route had no logical structure. He did not go from point A to point B. He moved in segments, as if checking previously designated areas. All the key finds, a food package, a cassette tape, a tent trace, a fabric fragment near a clearing, lay in different vectors, but formed a curvilinear axis going into the northern sector of the forest. Based on the last note from his cloud archive, which mentioned point north of 12, the experts decided to build a diagram using coordinates. It turned out that if you connect the GPS disconnection point, March 4th, the location of the hut, March 5, and the tracks in the clearing, March 6th, you get a triangle, in the center of which is a site marked on an old military map from 1956 as Temporary Winter Communications Camp 12. The marker no longer exists on any current source. Satellite images show only dense spruce forest. However, the hypothesis that Hardy was deliberately searching for this area has been strengthened. Rescuers conducted a test survey of the triangle's center. Within its boundaries, they found the following. Part of the antenna is telescopic, broken off at the base. A curved metal plate with the inscription, U.S. Forest, Com. Overgrown with moss. Trace of a camp a deep dent in the snow, square, without a tent, but with a charred central point. These findings confirmed that there had been something here before. Perhaps Hardy knew about it and was trying to get to this point. Perhaps he was looking for it as a shelter, or, on the contrary, as a final point. Then everything that had happened before this was simply a route of distraction. The question remained, how and why did he leave there? And did he leave? Instead of traces of departure from this point, only one thing was found, an old concave lid from a box. On the inside was a scratched inscription, "If you came back, everything went wrong." The handwriting is unstable, written with a thin, sharp object. Whether it matches Hardy's letter, the examination did not give a confident conclusion. But in terms of word length, letter height, and slant, the match is partial. As of April 13th, the case was officially closed. James Hardy was listed as missing. No body, clothing, or sign of return to civilization had ever been found. In the last frame of the tape, if you slow down the playback, you can see a glint of light like a reflection off glass, where the camera is pointed at the floor. Someone from the technical analysis group wrote in an unofficial report, "It looks like the lens of a second device." What exactly Hardy was looking for remains unknown, but all evidence suggests that his route was not random, or he was hiding, or he went where someone had already been before him.